They told me to leave my own home on the very day I buried my husband. I hadn't even changed out of the black dress. The house still carried the scent of lilies and incense from the funeral. The mourners had just gone, neighbors, distant cousins, people whose sympathy evaporated the second the front door clicked shut behind them. And that's when I heard it. Pack your things and get out. Your place is outside this building now. It was my mother-in-law's voice, flat and certain, as if she'd been rehearsing those words for years, just waiting for the chance to say them. I stood frozen in the hallway, just out of view, one hand pressed against the wall to steady myself. For a moment I told myself I'd misheard. I hadn't. My father-in-law didn't push back. He didn't even soften his tone. "She's not family anymore," he said. "Not without him. Not without him." 8 years of marriage erased in a single sentence. I didn't walk in right away. I just stood there and listened to them carve up my future as though I weren't 20 feet away, as though I'd already vanished. What neither of them knew, what I hadn't told a living soul, was that my husband had left something behind before he died. Not just memories. Not just grief. $200 million and a house in Italy, both in my name alone. I'd said nothing at the funeral. Nothing during the endless condolences. Nothing while they looked straight through me like I had nothing left to lose. So when I finally stepped into that room, I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just nodded. "Okay," I said, quiet and even. Then I went upstairs, sat down, and made a decision that would change everything. I didn't pack the whole room. Just what mattered: a suitcase, my documents, my passport, and one small envelope I'd kept hidden since the hospital. My husband had pressed it into my hands 2 days before he died. "Don't open it here," he'd told me. "Wait until you're alone." I hadn't understood what he meant. Now I did. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands steady, and broke the seal. Inside was a letter and a stack of legal papers. His handwriting, unmistakable, filled the page. "If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to protect you." I swallowed hard and kept going. "My parents will try to control everything: the house, the accounts, maybe even you." He'd known. Every line felt like it had been written for this exact hour. Don't fight them. Don't argue. Let them believe whatever they want. That was exactly what I'd just done, word for word. Everything that matters is already secured. The money, the properties, they're in your name. Not shared. Not accessible to anyone else. Only yours. $200 million. The house in Italy. All of it locked away where they could never touch it. I let out a long breath and finished reading. "When the time comes, you'll know exactly what to do." I folded the letter carefully and slid it back into the envelope. Outside my door, I could hear drawers sliding open, footsteps moving with purpose. They weren't waiting for me to leave. They were already claiming the space. I stood, closed my suitcase, and took one last look around the bedroom, not at the furniture, not at the walls, but at the woman I'd been for far too long, the one who stayed silent when she shouldn't have. Then I picked up my bag and walked out exactly the way they wanted me to, without a fight, without a single word. They thought they were pushing me out of their lives. They had no idea what they were about to lose instead. I didn't go far. Just across the street, to a small corner cafe, quiet and half empty, the kind of place nobody looks twice at. I took a seat by the window, set my suitcase down beside me, and ordered a coffee I never touched. From there I had a clear view of the building, my building, or at least the one they now believed belonged to them. One by one the lights flicked on inside, shadows drifting behind the curtains. They weren't mourning. They were moving in. I pulled out my phone. Missed calls were already stacking up, unfamiliar numbers, probably relatives, maybe lawyers. I ignored every one of them and opened something else instead, an email my husband had sent me months earlier. My phone buzzed right on schedule. I let it ring once before answering. "Where are you?" she asked, and her voice had lost every trace of ice. I looked straight through the cafe window at her. "Exactly where I need to be." Silence. Then, quieter. "What is this?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain myself. "It's ownership," I said, and hung up. They showed up at the cafe 10 minutes later, not walking but running. The door banged open hard enough that heads turned. For a second, neither of them recognized me. Then my mother-in-law spotted where I was sitting, and her steps slowed to a stop. "Sarah," she started. "Claire," I corrected, calm as still water. "My real name. Not the one you used only when it was convenient for you." She froze, then forced a smile that never reached her eyes. "There's clearly been some kind of mistake," she said, dropping into the chair across from me without asking. "This notice, someone got their facts wrong." My father-in-law stayed on his feet, gripping the paper like it might rewrite itself if he stared long enough. "No mistake," I said. Her smile hardened. "You don't understand how any of this works," she said, softer now, almost coaxing. "That house belongs to this family." I held her stare. "It does," I agreed. Relief flickered across her face, far too soon. "Just not to your part of it." The relief died instantly. My father-in-law stepped closer. "We've lived in that house for years. You can't just push us out like this." "I didn't," I said. "You pushed yourselves out." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut, because we all knew exactly what I meant. My mother-in-law leaned in, lowering her voice. "Listen. We can settle this quietly. There's no reason to take it further. It's already gone further." Something flickered behind her eyes for the first time, not control, not confidence. Doubt. Because the version of me she'd expected to crumble was sitting right there in front of her, and I wasn't going anywhere. They stopped arguing after that. Not completely, but the tone shifted. "My son wouldn't have wanted this," my mother-in-law said quietly, trying a gentler approach. I let that sit for a moment before answering, just as quietly. "My husband made sure this would happen." That silenced her completely, because now it wasn't me she had to argue with. It was him. And she couldn't win that fight. My father-in-law finally lowered himself into a chair, slower this time. "He wouldn't turn his back on his own parents," he said. I looked at him steadily. "He didn't. He just made sure you couldn't turn on me." The silence that followed was heavy, final. They had built their entire plan on one assumption, that I'd be left with nothing, no protection, no power, no voice once he was gone. They'd been wrong. They'd always been wrong. My mother-in-law's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. "What do you want?" she asked finally, not a demand this time, but an honest question. That alone was new. I didn't answer right away. I looked past them, out the window, at the building across the street. Lights still burning, doors still standing open. No longer theirs. "Nothing," I said. They both frowned. "Then why do all this?" my father-in-law asked. I rose slowly and picked up my bag. Because the answer was never complicated. I met her eyes one last time. "You told me exactly where my place was. And I believed you." Then I turned and walked out, leaving them sitting there, powerless for the first time in their lives. They didn't leave the house right away, of course. People like them never take the first notice seriously. Or the second. Or even the third. They believe that if they push hard enough, wait long enough, pull the right strings, everything will eventually bend back in their favor. This time, nothing bent. The second notice came with a deadline. The third came with enforcement attached. By the fourth day, they were packing in silence. No more arguing, no more phone calls, just boxes and quiet. I didn't go back while they were still there. I didn't need to see it. I'd already seen enough. When I finally returned, the house stood empty. No voices. Flagged important, never explained. At the time I hadn't thought much of it. Now I understood exactly why he'd sent it. Attached were ownership records, account confirmations, and one line that jumped off the screen. Primary control holder, Claire Hale. My name. Not his. Not his parents. Mine. Everything tied to him, his business shares, his properties, his accounts, had been legally separated and redirected, quietly, months in advance, protected before anyone even knew protection would be needed. I leaned back and watched the building glow across the street. She's not family anymore. Not without him. My father-in-law's words kept looping in my head. He'd been right about one thing. We weren't family anymore. Just not for the reason he thought. I scrolled to a contact I'd never used before, the estate attorney my husband had trusted completely, the one man who already knew everything. The call connected on the first ring. "Mrs. Hale," he said, calm as ever. "I think it's time," I told him. Across the street, They had no idea the clock had just started running. "Good," he said. "I was expecting your call." That didn't surprise me in the slightest. My husband never left loose ends. "They've put me out of the house," I said evenly. "Made it very clear I'm not welcome there." A brief pause. That actually simplifies things. I glanced back at the building. Lights on. Figures moving inside. "Getting comfortable." "Walk me through it," I said. His voice stayed level. "Everything tied to your husband's estate, the assets, the accounts, the properties, has already been transferred. His parents have no legal claim to any of it." I assumed as much. "What you may not realize," he continued, "is that the residence they're currently occupying is registered under a holding structure connected directly to you." I went still. "Meaning?" "Meaning they aren't owners. They're occupants. And as of today, unauthorized ones." Unauthorized. The word landed differently than I expected. Not emotional, not personal. Just clean, legal fact. "What are my options?" I asked. "You can let them stay," he said. "Or you can begin removal proceedings." Through the window, I watched the front door swing open. My mother-in-law stepped out, phone pressed to her ear, pacing back and forth like she already owned every square foot behind her. I thought about her voice in that hallway. "Your place is outside this building now." I let the silence stretch a moment longer. "Start the process," I said. "Understood." No hesitation, no follow-up questions. Just action. I ended the call and sat there for a while, not shaking, not angry, just clear. They had already decided what I was worth without him in the picture. Now they were about to find out what they were worth without me. And this time, there would be no conversation. Only paperwork. The notice arrived the next morning, delivered not by me but by a courier in a dark suit who didn't bother knocking twice. I was back in the same cafe, the same seat by the window, coffee in front of me that I still had no intention of drinking. I watched the door open. My father-in-law took the envelope, glanced at it without much interest at first. Then he opened it, and everything changed. Even from across the street, I could see it happen, his shoulders locking up, his eyes crawling slowly down the page, then going back to the top to read it again, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less alarming. My mother-in-law appeared behind him, impatient. "Who is it?" He didn't answer. He just handed her the paper. She read it fast, too fast, then stopped, backtracked to the beginning, and read it again, slower this time. When she finally looked up, she wasn't confused anymore. She was afraid. I leaned back in my chair and kept watching. They stepped outside together, voices rising, all pretense of composure gone. "What is this?" she demanded. "An eviction notice," he said, his voice tight. "Eviction from where?" He didn't answer, because he didn't need to. They both turned and stared up at the building behind them, the one they'd assumed was theirs, the one they'd just thrown me out of days earlier. No footsteps, no one trying to hold on to space that was never truly theirs. Just silence, clean and complete. I walked through the room slowly. Nothing had physically changed, and yet everything felt different. Lighter. Like something that never belonged had finally been lifted away. On the kitchen counter sat a note in my mother-in-law's handwriting. "You didn't have to do this." I read it once, then folded it, because she was wrong. I did have to. Not out of revenge, not for the money. For something far simpler, for clarity. The moment they told me my place was outside that door, they made their choice. I simply answered it. I walked to the window and looked down at the street below. Same view, same city, an entirely different life waiting for me now. My husband had protected me, not with promises, not with words, but with structure, with decisions he'd quietly made long before I ever knew I'd need them. And for the first time since he'd been gone, no one was pushing me out of anywhere. I was standing exactly where I belonged.